Good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Harger, Chairperson of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission. Today is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, and the regular meeting of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission being conducted in Shelton City Hall. What was that? Oh. The Shelton City Hall Auditorium via Zoom and through a phone link is hereby called to order at 6:05 p.m. This meeting is also being carried live on YouTube. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite those participating remotely to do the same. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'll start off with a roll call of the commission. Please verbally indicate you are present when your name is called. Commissioner Kelly.
Present.
Commissioner Parkins.
Present.
Commissioner Laskos.
Present.
Commissioner Tiki. Commissioner Motto.
Here.
Commissioner Usel.
Present.
Okay. Myself, Commissioner Harger. Mr. Rossetti, our administrator. Mr. Panico, our consultant. Okay, Commissioner Tiki.
Yes, I was on, but I wasn't promoted as a panelist at that point, but I've been here.
Just doing roll call. Mr. Panico.
He's there.
Mr. Panico, are you on mute?
No.
Ms. Vernassos, our recording secretary.
Present.
Alex, are you able to get in touch with Tony? Okay, for the record, the alternate Commissioner Nafrio indicated he would not be available for this evening's meeting, and Mr. Nappy, our Downtown Development Coordinator, is excused. Couple of points before continuing with today's agenda. Mr. Rossetti will act as the Zoom meeting host. While commissioners will be able to make comments throughout the meeting, the chair asks that you please identify yourself and wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking to make sure we're not all speaking over each other and to make sure our recording secretary is clear as to who is speaking. The chair is permitted to take agenda items out of order, and I will be doing so tonight, starting with new business item B. And before I do, Mr. Panico?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, very good. We couldn't hear you before, so you are present.
Sorry, I was a little late.
No, you were there, but we just couldn't hear you. So new business, item B on the agenda reads, set public hearing date for determination and action as to whether to opt out of state of Connecticut accessory apartment units, ADU legislation, which is state statute 8-2, including but not limited to separate provisions of the legislation which pertain to parking regulations. And also I'd like to recognize Attorney Teodoso is here.
This chair, the camera's in the middle of this table.
You want him to sit here?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay. Right there.
Right in front of that white thing.
And the microphone.
It's on the
Yeah.
white.
That's the mic.
the big
Oh,
white-
the tower.
I thought that was water.
I know, it looks like it, huh?
I thought that was a jug of water.
Okay, so, Mr. Attorney Panico, can you sort of fill us in a little bit on this statute? I think we spoke about it.
You want Tony? I'm sorry.
No, Did I say Attorney Panico?
Yeah.
Attorney Teodoso, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay,
I think I've actually spoken to members of the commission, at least to a subcommittee with regard to this, the legislation that this action is making allusion to. The General Assembly has passed a zoning provision which applies to all municipalities unless the municipalities choose before July 1st to opt out. And what the zoning regulation does is essentially take ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or I should say structures, and allows them to become accessory dwelling units that are legitimate. You're probably most familiar with them with the jargon of in-law apartments or garage apartments, if you will, or basement apartments. What they've done is they've said if the building code allows the structure in that it is safe and passes all building requirements, it will be a legitimately zoned dwelling unit within the city unless the city chooses to opt out. They also have passed a provision which says any parking limitations regarding the accessory dwelling unit or within that zone would not be applicable unless you specifically opt out. So you're left with the choice of either allowing this, which is essentially an overlay on your zoning regulations, to take effect, or opt out of it and continue your own process of deciding whether or not a dwelling unit will be allowed in those areas that I've described.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so we would have further discussion on this after the public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
Attorney Tucci
Or
also?
during the
Yep,
public hearing.
yep, exactly. So is there a motion for staff to set a public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Can I just, excuse me, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I thought that this may have been mentioned in a planning subcommittee and a zoning subcommittee meeting, but it wasn't the primary subject of the discussion, as I recall. So can we have that kind of a meeting? I would like to know more about this before it goes to public hearing.
Sure.
Is anybody else interested in that? Anybody
Well, the
else?
problem is that if we don't do something by July 1st, it automatically goes into effect.
Well, we can set the public hearing. I have no objection to doing that. And
Mhm.
timely, just that before we go to public hearing, I would personally like to be better informed about what
Let
it
me
all.
ask staff, what date do you
Great.
have in mind for a public hearing, you think?
On this one, I don't care.
May 23rd,
May 25th would be the public hearing, so 2 weeks from tomorrow.
correct?
Could Alex or someone send Commissioner Motto the proposed,
Legislation.
the legislation? So you get
sure.
a better understanding of why they're doing it and what it's all about. It basically takes the control out of our hands.
I understand that, but I don't, what I don't understand is it all or nothing? Is it, you have to allow the parking, you can't allow restriction if you allow the housing? I'd like to know how it's going to fit into our own plan for affordable housing.
It only affects accessory dwellings.
Yeah,
Right, it's only
Commissioner-
relative to the ADUs.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Izzetti, I think
Parking
wants
has
to
nothing
take,
to do with the rest of our zoning.
Commissioner Motto, I think.
Yeah.
I'm happy to set up a meeting. I'll work with Corporation Counsel. We'll get that material sent out to everybody and we'll schedule a meeting. I think I know where you're headed with this. The reason why we would encourage the commission to consider opting out is because there are a variety of other items included in what the state passed that the commission may or may not want to include in our regulations. So rather than nitpick through the state statutes, we thought it might behoove us to opt out of everything the state is requiring. And then when we move forward with our plans, to add in what we want to include. So basically, we start with a clean slate and include what we want to include and not have to worry about having or not having a parking regulation or this, that, or the other. So just kind of saying, no thanks, we'll do our own.
Yeah,
that's kind of-
okay, got it. Yeah,
This-
it sounds
and,
like state proposal, it's like an all or nothing. You take all of it
Correct,
together.
Mhm.
correct.
It's top-down zoning.
Mm. And it's not unlike what other communities in the state have already done. There are several that have gone through opt-out. I just want to ask, and I'll search for it when I get home later on or tomorrow morning, but I believe I did share a material
You did.
with the commission. So I just don't have that in front of me so that I could point to a date, but I will check on that because I think.
What is the tentative public hearing date?
May 25th.
So we're still have a motion open on the floor that
5/25?
that Commissioner Kelly made for staff to set a public hearing, which they have indicated would be May 25th. And I need a second on that.
Okay. We have more time in the event you want to delay it a little further.
No, that's
No, not necessarily.
do it. Yeah.
No. I need a second on that motion, please.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Amato. So on the motion for staff to set public hearing for May 25th, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Parkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Amato,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
Aye.
Commissioner Lascos.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is passed 6-0. All right, next item on the agenda will be, I'm sorry.
If I could just kind of.
Yeah, go right ahead, Attorney Tedosco.
I just want to make the commission aware that I failed to tell you that in addition to you voting to opt out, the Board of Aldermen have to also vote to opt out.
Mhm,
It's a double requirement by the state. So
mhm.
you could do everything and say we're opting out, and if they say no, you're in. I doubt that they would do that. I think they defer to you with regard to your zoning expertise, but that's the way the legislation is written.
Are we supposed to go first?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we do have not all the time in the world, really.
No,
Yeah.
Because we need to be on the June agenda for the Board of Aldermen.
right.
Right.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on this topic for Attorney Tedosco? All right, if not, the next is new business item C. And it reads, set public hearing date for determination and action as to whether to institute a temporary moratorium on acceptance, review, and approval of high-density residential projects. Attorney Tedosco, is there anything you could speak to on this?
Yes, the status of high-density projects here in Shelton, as you know, all know, is pretty intense right now. You have a number of projects going forward in a number of zones. And the language in our zoning regulations is somewhat lacking with regard to the specific parameters that you want in all zones with regard to high-density development. It would be a good idea to slow that down. And the suggestion has come that it be done in the form of a zoning regulation moratorium, which you all are getting pretty familiar with. If you look at the zoning regulations right now, the term multifamily dwelling is in there, and it's not really defined in your definitions. It is listed in your Schedule B, and then Schedule B makes a reference to sections 31 et al. And sections 33 et al. And in there, there's reference to parameters for high-density multi-development. And you've been looking at projects and approving projects with those kinds of definitions in front of you. In addition to that, a backdoor way of getting apartments here in Shelton is use of the PDD, which essentially creates a new zone every time you create a PDD. So you're creating a new apartment zone every single time. All of those very, if you will, discretionary provisions that you have right now are leading to a substantial influx of applications for high-density development. And you're seeing the effects with regard to parking. You're seeing the effects with regard to just the number of units that are spilling into residential areas or areas where people never thought that there would be apartments. And that may be good, that may be bad. I'm not talking about the policy reasons for that. I'm just talking about control for that. And this is a consideration that the panel is being asked to undertake.
Mhm. Can you sort of address, once the public hearing is set, what happens to anyone that may be considering submitting an application?
The general statutes control when applications are submitted. And there's a definition that essentially says that the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, a complete application would be considered accepted. So how you decide when your last application is acceptable is dependent upon when you set your public hearing and when you have the zoning regulation, or in this case, moratorium, which I'm calling a zoning regulation, go into effect. If it goes into effect before your next regularly scheduled meeting, applications that are in right now and are formally in and can move through the process would be accepted, but any application that's incomplete would not be. And your next regularly scheduled meeting has to be at least 35 days from when the application was dropped off. Otherwise, by statutory law, it becomes accepted. So you all have to decide.
The way that this is written on the agenda, it does not designate a certain part of town. It's citywide.
Well, that's the decision that the commission needs to make. I mean,
Okay.
those are all policy decisions that everybody has to consider.
Mhm.
Whether you're going to do it for the entire town, whether you're going to do it for certain districts, whether you're going to say if apartments have self-contained parking, we're not going to impose a moratorium. If they're going to utilize our parking, then we are, because we want to take a look at our parking.
Mhm. Okay. And so that's a discussion that we would take after the public hearing, after we hear
Well, that's in the public
in the
hearing.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying among the commission itself. Okay. So timeframe could be, as we determined in previous ones, it could be until the end of the year, it could be 12
You could
months.
do, if you recall back to the legislation that we talked about, I'm sorry, the zoning moratorium that we talked about with regard to the cannabis, you could impose a longer time and then pull it back if you're ready to go forward. If you think that you as a commission have satisfactory regulations that you now want to pass, you could do that. You could change a year moratorium into a 6-month moratorium, a 3-month moratorium. You could even pull certain locations out of the moratorium quicker if you decide that those locations better accommodate development with the regulations that are in place or with the regulations that you put in place.
And right now, the R1 zones do not allow high density. So
Except for a PDD.
except for PDD, right?
Can I ask a question? On most of the high density projects that have come up, they have been PDDs.
Mhm.
And couldn't we just reject the PDD and not have a moratorium?
It's better if you write the zoning regulation that the PDD can't be used as a vehicle, because when you do the rejection, you get the dance with the 8-30G.
Okay,
Mhm.
but what?
Or the bottom line is, if it does get filed, you could simply say no.
Well, that's what Tony's saying, but
Charlie,
Charlie, I'm sorry, Tony. I'm looking at Tony, I'm.
So there
Right.
is
But-
we have the ability to prioritize in a way.
the 30-8G, we have no control over it.
Correct, but if you have the PDD district right now says that any party that comes in can literally propose a new zoning district for the city, and that new zoning district is the specific project that's within the PDD. All I'm saying to you is if you go ahead and you say, we're stopping all this for a certain period of time, the PDD is out there lurking And unless you specifically say that you can't use the PDD to create a high-density project for a certain period of time, you might be subject to somebody trying to do it and then saying, okay, I'm gonna come back in with a PDD for an
Right, no, the
8-30G.
only thing I'm thinking about is that what you're saying, you know, you could have this, you could have that. I don't think it's, maybe it's just speaking for myself, but the commission's is to have a menu of what should be or shouldn't be. I mean, you make it, one way you'll make it so complicated, no one's gonna understand it.
Mm.
And it's just a point where you kind of simplify it. Where, you know, I don't know, for an example.
Ask a question.
Downtown,
Next, all right, a couple of questions. Yeah.
I guess. it's-
All right, go ahead, Commissioner Moto.
Yeah, all right, so I think I heard Attorney Teodoso said that this has been suggested, but I didn't get from where it is coming from. And the other thing is, if we are, I'm asking, are we the applicant for this item on the agenda, or when it goes to public hearing? It seems like we ought to know more about it than we do right now, or have a better idea of what we want to see happen, if we are in fact the applicant for this.
It's generated through the commission. I mean, there's been discussion with regard to the apartments. There've been calls to the mayor's office with regard to apartments. There's been concern about apartments. I've listened to the commission agonize over parking issues with regard to projects that have come before. So these
Right,
are
so-
suggestions. So if you go forward, it would be you. It's not an applicant coming in and doing it.
Right, it said it's the commission.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is this is coming from you and the mayor?
Coming from me, it's coming from the mayor, but it's coming from me as a reaction to the questions that I'm getting from the commission with regard to the concerns about apartments. And
Okay.
about
And the other
Commissioner
thing,
Amato, I will
Yeah.
say that I expressed my thought that we should put a moratorium on, because we're going to be inundated with apartments very
Yeah.
shortly. And while downtown is one thing, there's so many parcels that people are just looking all across town to put apartments in. And I think we just need to really sit back for a minute and think about and plan better.
okay. The other thing is, I thought we had already restricted PDDs from residential areas, or did that never get finalized? That was.
As long as it's in a transition zone, which is in
But I thought
between.
that too was also,
You're correct.
Jane?
You're correct with regard to that.
yeah. So it's not they're not allowed in transition or residential zones. PDD, okay. All right, so
When did we change that?
that was a while ago.
Took a final vote on that.
That's in the.
We didn't,
regulation.
did.
I don't ever recall making.
When Commissioner Wardonsky had proposed,
Yeah,
so that was 2 years ago, that was pre-COVID, we had
Well, hold on.
discussions.
I'll just.
So maybe we're talking about two different things.
no, I'm just not clear about whether it got finalized. I know we talked about it a lot.
We created the PRD zone, which made it easier for more dense housing on in a residential area. We created that zone specifically to try to avoid everybody coming in for PDDs. But I don't think we ever changed the regulation for the PDD to not allow a PDD in a transition zone.
No, the
I
PDD
think
can still go in a
Commissioner
transition zone, but what I was saying when I said residential is you've got apartments that are large and they could be next to a residential zone. That's all. In your transition area, it may not be sufficient. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So again, maybe we should really have some time to look at
I agree.
where,
That's what this is all about.
But
That's what
we're
I'm talking
going
about.
to a public hearing and we don't know what we want on the commission. It's not, it doesn't,
That's why you're asking for the time to figure that out.
oh, to
Right.
just do a moratorium and then do.
Exactly.
Exactly right.
I think
So
you
that
know,
would-
you know some of your limitations, but you're not sure of what they all are.
Right, and does that mean no more apartments downtown or in the business district or the river district?
If that's the decision of the commission for a short
That's-
period of time.
up
Understand, we're
to
talking
us.
about a relatively short period of time. This is not a forever thing.
Hmm.
So,
But we can exclude sections. We can exclude downtown from this moratorium if we so desire. Because, you know, there's projects going on downtown that even if they put in an application today, may take them 2 or 3 years to build out with all the other approvals that may be needed or cleanups or anything like that. So that is something that we can consider. And I think we should consider.
anything that's in the mill already, you need to finish your process. So,
Yeah, it's taking a step back and
Taking a deep breath.
and, yeah, and that's just it. We have to sort of look at the whole picture as to how everything is coming in and lining up and how things affect each other.
Well, I
So,
know all the commissioners, we all wrestle with parking,
oh, yeah,
all of us.
and that would definitely be,
That would be a
Situation.
priority.
yeah, and that's the whole thing. It could be written that if you have, as Attorney Tito's, I think, mentioned, if you have on-site parking, that's, you know, gonna be a bonus and something that is, what's the word I'm looking for? That would qualify
Mhm.
for,
We could alter the parking requirements that we've been.
Yes, we
Exactly.
could.
Yeah,
I also would just question how we would handle, you know, I think once we set this hearing for a public hearing, we may get flooded with applications that aren't quite ready, but they want to get in before the moratorium is imposed. But then, you know, their plans aren't really ready, they get approved, and then they come back for modifications. I think we have to think about how we would handle that situation, knowing exactly what is going on.
Mhm. Attorney Tito, so is there anything you could speak to
Well,
about
that's
that?
why I was talking about the process with regard to the general statute, and what the general statute considers a legitimate submission to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mhm.
Planning and Zoning Commission needs to accept any application that is complete at its next regularly scheduled meeting, or if you don't have a meeting, 36th day after a completed application is submitted, it's considered accepted by the board and the process starts.
Mhm.
Well, I'm more talking about major modifications after they get approval for it. If we're in a situation where we have to approve it, but they just come back in, you know, a month or 2 later with a major modification. In other words, we approved it because they got it in time.
Well, we do not have to approve a major modification. It's the
and
chance
also
that they
you do
take.
not have to approve the initial project because most of them are PDDs.
Correct,
Mhm.
correct.
Mm. You know, we don't want to shortchange anybody,
Right.
and the most importantly, we don't want to shortchange the city.
We want to be fair.
Yeah, and so this is a chance for us to sit down and look at everything and make sure that we're moving forward in the right manner to accommodate everybody. So,
how much time do you think it would take really to really review the whole, kind of the whole city and where the districts are that we would or wouldn't want high density housing? Does that?
Well, I'm not sure that you need to study the city in terms of where do you think you want them or not want them. Your time is to be spent on what are the appropriate standards to use when considering a proposal. And
mhm.
right now, there's some concern as to whether or not things like parking ratios are sufficient, or should they be different downtown from a suburban site and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we could technically do this at a meeting of the commission. Look at it step by step as we've been doing for other text changes. and,
If the commission chooses to do it that way.
yeah, it doesn't have to be, it could be a commission-wide discussion, not
Mhm.
necessarily just a subcommittee discussion. So,
I think that's a good way to go.
yeah, so.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, so that's the item on the agenda. And what we need to do is to have a motion to set a public hearing date towards that end, which is the determination and action as to whether to institute a temporary moratorium on the acceptance, review, and approval of high-density residential projects. Mr. Rossetti, do you have an idea of the public hearing date for that?
June 1st.
June 1st? Which would be a special meeting, because our meeting in June. Yeah, and you know, the
June,
me-
June
the
meeting's
Wednesday,
the
June
14th.
1st. No, Wednesday, June 1st is what staff is suggesting that we have as the public
Okay.
hearing. It would be a special additional meeting, not one that we've already have on our schedule. And I believe we did that a while ago.
6:14 is your regular meeting.
Right.
Right, exactly.
I will just say I'm not available for that date, but feel free to schedule anyway.
Okay. All right. Is that date not workable for other people? If otherwise, we could look at June 2nd. Unless it's not a Board of Alderman meeting. So,
June, Ruth, I don't think you should get out of this.
Well, then it will have to be the following week, the first full week of June.
that's right. That's your time frame when you're traveling. So. But that doesn't mean that Commissioner Parkins could not get familiar with the Zoom recording of our.
That's right.
meeting.
I can certainly catch up via that.
Right. I think she's the responsible person, as a responsible person, she would. Okay, all right, so is there a commissioner who'd like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
There's a motion for staff to set a public hearing on June 1st from Commissioner Kelly. Is there a second?
Commissioner Laskos, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Laskos. So on the motion for staff to set a public hearing for June 1st for new business item C, I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Laskos,
He's on mute.
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
I can't hear him.
was that an
He's
aye?
on mute too.
Aye,
Okay.
said aye.
Commissioner Mato,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins,
But
what's your vote side?
I have a follow-up question on that. So the moratorium will be open for discussion from the public on the concept of having the moratorium, correct? That's what the discussion will be, is that of whether we have the moratorium.
Correct.
At that meeting, is that when it would be discussed if any areas are going to be excluded from the moratorium?
I think
That's
it'd be
the commission
appropriate.
to decide.
Yeah, that would come up. That would be, what do we include? What don't we include? Mhm. It's a start.
So I guess my next question is, because I would like to have input into that, would the public hearing be kept open, or do you think it would close because there wouldn't be enough discussion? Just a theoretical question.
No.
The commission has the power to keep the public hearing open a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
It's discretionary. It doesn't say you can only keep it open if there are people in the audience.
Okay. All right. I can always share my thoughts too. I don't want you folks to keep the hearing open if it's not needed to, but.
No, but if this is not like item A where we have to do something by July 1st. This has nothing that kind of time frame.
So even if we have a discussion generally about where, some of these ideas about the parking and where the housing should go, we don't have to finalize it at that meeting by any
No,
means.
not at all.
No, you don't
No, I
have to,
think,
you don't have to come up with a solution.
No, it's just the concept of having the moratorium. Do
For
the
people
purpose
approve
of
of having a moratorium?
mhm.
Deciding where these things should go and what the what the parameters should be. Yeah.
I just think at that meeting, you also have to, if you're going to impose a moratorium, you have to, at that point, exclude what you don't want to have included in the moratorium.
You just confused the hell out of me. What? What was that?
Both sides.
Am I correct, Attorney Teodosio? Am I correct?
You have to get some general agreement as to what you're saying, because I have to put what you're saying into verbiage,
Mhm.
and it has to be available for people to see before you actually vote.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think we can accomplish all this on just June 1st.
No, I don't either, because
So-
it is a menu.
Yeah,
It is a menu.
Okay, I can always just submit a comment, a letter of comment.
yeah, I think you'll have ample
To the
opportunity
chairwoman.
after June 1st to
Okay.
comment. on it. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much. All right, so next, under new business, we're gonna stay in new business and go under item A, application 22-12, Tracy Lewis for the Casey's at 50 Armstrong Road. Trinity Doso, is there something else you want to stick around for?
Now, I'd just like to tell the commission that I saw Mr. Panico's, is that on the agenda for tonight?
The resolution?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
2202.
saw his suggestion to the commission, and I thought it was very well written, very well
Mhm.
reasoned, and
Mhm.
encouraged the commission to accept his guidance as always.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, I'll mention that again. Thank you,
Yeah.
Trinity Doso. All right, so
I'm happy.
as I said, we're going up to new
night,
business item A, application 22-12. Tracy Lewis for the Casey's at 50 Armstrong Road, Assessors Map 10, Lot 1, on 3.36 acres for a subdivision in an R1 zone to create an additional building lot. Is there a motion to accept the application 22-12?
I'll make the motion.
That was Commissioner Amato? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, Commissioner Tiki is seconded, so on the motion to accept from Commissioner Amato, seconded by Commissioner Tiki, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Amato?
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki?
aye.
Commissioner Lascos?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Staff, did you, Mr. Rossetti, were you able to get in touch with the applicant?
Let me see if there's someone that's called. 660-689-4355. That's the applicant for this application. Could you speak up, please? Phone number 860-689-4355. If that's Tracy or one of the applicants for this subdivision on 50 Armstrong Road, please speak up.
Take it off of mute.
They're an attendee. I've already unmuted them.
So there's no name in the waiting room, it's just identified by a phone number?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Okay, there's somebody. Could you identify yourself, sir?
Yeah, this is Richard Hall from Borghese Building and Engineering. I'm just listening in tonight. I don't think I'm involved with your current topic. We're supposed to be on the agenda for the language change for the LIP zone.
Oh, okay, so this, you're the mysterious telephone number, but not for this particular application. Okay,
No,
all right.
no, ma'am.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. All right, so it doesn't seem like the applicant was present? No, okay. All right, then we'll take a motion to table application.
See if this one.
You have somebody else, you think?
I think you have to accept it for review.
We did. We just voted to do that.
Okay. And a final determination as to whether it's a subdivision or a re-subdivision will be made.
Yeah, that's why we were trying to identify if the applicant is here to clarify that.
Mhm.
Whew.
Okay,
What?
we didn't vote.
Yes, we did. We did a roll call
Did we vote?
to accept. Huh? Nobody there. Okay. All right. So the applicant isn't here. We have questions of the applicant. They're not present to present their proposal or to answer our questions. So is there a motion to table?
I'll motion to table.
And that is
Commissioner Tiki.
Commissioner Dickey. Okay.
I'll second that.
And
Commissioner
that's seconded by Commissioner Kelly. So we do a roll call.
What are you tabling, madam?
We accepted it for review. So actually, we need to just, we don't need to table it.
Any further
It's
action?
just- Yeah, we just.
Okay.
move on
You
to
have
another-
accepted it. You have accepted it for review though, right?
Right. Yes, we have. So
Good.
then it'll
Okay.
just show up on a future agenda,
Okay.
right? Okay. So Commissioner Dickey, can you withdraw your motion? It's not needed.
I'll withdraw my motion to table.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Kelly, you
I
table,
will.
withdrawing your second. All right. All right, so now, where are we? We're going now up to old business. Application 21-30, Russo and Rizzio LLC, 79 Platte Road LLC, Assessors Map 77, Lot 20, 1.96 acres for a zone change from OPD to IA2 and a special exception. 3 buildings, with 1 building in the front for a limited retail use connected with the contractor's business, and 2 buildings in the rear for private contractor storage and equipment bays. Staff has advised that this particular application should be split as we did previously for Dogtopia, where we were asked to do a zone change and then we were asked to do a major modification. This is a zone change and a special exception. So this particular application, 2130, was accepted for review on January 11th of this year. Public hearing opened and closed on April 27th. If the commission is in agreement that Office Park District, which is currently the zone for this particular parcel, is not an appropriate use, and an IA2 zone is, staff would be directed to prepare a favorable resolution. So what's the consensus of the commission? We know where the piece of property is, and we know what it's currently zoned, and there's been a proposal to change it to IA2. So what's the consensus? Commissioner Kelly,
I'm in favor of changing.
you're in favor of a zone change?
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
I'm not, we don't have a motion. I'm just going around and have a consensus.
Oh, yes, aye, yes.
Okay, so you are in favor of a zone change. Commissioner Amato, how about you?
Yeah, it made sense, the presentation. I thought it'd be a good
Okay.
use.
All right, Commissioner Lascos,
I'm in favor of their proposal.
zone change?
Zone
This-
change.
We're only talking about a zone change, okay? Commissioner Dickey?
Yes, I would agree.
Okay, and the chair is in agreement as well. So staff is directed to prepare a favorable resolution for just the approval of a zone change. The applicant would need to come back for approval of the special exception to locate a specific business on that parcel. What?
Special exception is part of this application. How would you like to address?
Can't hear you.
The special exception is part of this application, so we still need to discuss, do you want that to be part of the resolution or not?
I think it should be separate.
It really should be, because until you make the zone change, the site is not eligible for the special
Before that.
exception.
Mhm.
Aside from the fact that there are some issues with the special exception that don't affect the zone change.
Okay, all right, so staff can work on that. All right, so now we're going into application 2202. City of Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission Regulation Text Amendments to Schedule A Permitted Uses, Schedule B Lot Standards, and Section 24 Area, Location, and Bulk Standards, and minor updates related to the IA1 and industrial zones. So, Mr. Rossetti, where do you want to start? And Mr. Panico is here with information as well.
turn it over to Tony, let them go through.
Okay. All right, Mr. Panico, this is being turned over to you to go through. Does, Mr. Rossetti, do you have printed material to put up on the screen? And this was also emailed to listeners this afternoon. All right, so there should be a 8 or 9 page resolution that Mr. Panico prepared that goes over step by step all the different changes to schedules A and B and for the standards.
We had to break it down because there are a lot of little changes that have to occur throughout many sections of the regulations. And I hope and believe that we do have them all covered. But just to refresh everybody's memory as to why we're doing all this, by way of background, the city of Shelton is preparing for construction of the initial phase of Constitution Boulevard North, extending from its current connection with Bridgeport Avenue directly opposite and as a continuation of Constitution Boulevard South, at least to the northerly limits of the city-owned former Moss property. Consistent with long-range planning for this major road facility.
Now, scroll up.
Are we okay?
Yeah, I'm mentioning to Mr. Rossetti to scroll up. Okay.
Consistent with long-range planning for this major road facility extension, planning and zoning has anticipated the economic growth and development of the area, focusing initially on the Moss property and other city-owned parcels that are being served by the proposed road. The commission has been developing proposed zoning to serve anticipated needs and to allow the reasonable replacement of the PDD 11 zoning that's currently applicable to the former Moss property. That zone is still in place.
I thought we had, okay. I thought that expired. I thought that was.
No, what expires are the development plans.
The plans.
They have a time limit, but
Yeah.
zoning cannot expire by itself.
Until you change it.
You have to
Okay.
have a hearing and change the zoning.
Sorry,
Mhm.
yeah, got
So
it.
yes, the plans have expired. No, the zoning is still in place.
Okay.
The primary intent of the proposed amendments is to modify the provisions and standards of the current IA1 district. After a long discussion, the consensus was that that's probably the best district to work around. These changes will make it a more functional zone appropriate for widespread use along Constitution Boulevard North Corridor. It'll be suitable for replacing the current PDD 6 zoning of the Moss parcel, as well as for other vacant and developable parcels of land that'll become available with the creation of arterial road access and the necessary utility services. With the proposed modification, the IA1 zone may also be useful in other industrial sites in the city. So it's not just here, although our primary need right now is here. At the present time, the current IA zone as it exists is not in place anywhere in the city. Where it had been used, it had been eliminated. As a result, any of these modifications that you're considering tonight will not affect any existing properties. There's no parcels in the city of Shelton that enjoy that zoning today. The proposed Schedule A permitted uses and its amendments are intended to protect the area by eliminating potentially undesirable or incompatible uses that are currently allowed in that IA1 zone. The amendments also modify certain use lines and create additional use lines anticipated as potentially needed to accommodate the uses necessary and desirable for compatible development, as well as support services. Certain of these restrictive uses may also be desirable for inclusion in the light industrial park district to accommodate certain desirable uses such as high-tech warehousing and other uses that are economically beneficial to the city's tax rolls and yet today are not allowed in that zone. Since the IA1 district was originally designed and intended for suburban sites without benefit of utility services, Schedule B standards is now proposed to be adjusted relative to lot frontages, building height, setbacks, numbers of stories, lot coverage, and floor area ratio to be able to accommodate anticipated development that we foresee in the Constitution Boulevard North Corridor. The commission has worked diligently with the zoning subcommittee and staff to develop the carefully worded amendments as proposed. The commission made the necessary referrals to the regional and state agencies and held a duly noticed public hearing on February 23rd, 2022, and that hearing was continued to and closed on March 23rd, 2022. Public comments were generally constructive, pointing out provisions in need of further clarification. The commission met for further discussion, clarification, and review of final proposed amendments and changes, arriving at a consensus to direct staff to prepare a favorable resolution for consideration and possible adoption. On the basis of this authorization, staff has prepared the following resolution for commission consideration and possible action. Okay, the resolution. Whereas the city of Shelton is preparing to construct the initial phase of Constitution Boulevard North, providing opportunity for the private sector to initiate major economic development on a significant portion of the city-owned Moss property. In addition, the mayor, in his position as economic development coordinator, is involved in other ongoing negotiations and informal discussions regarding prospective economic development proposals in the area. And whereas the commission, its zoning subcommittee, and staff have been reviewing in detail zoning issues impacting the overall area and has completed a detailed program of zoning adjustments needed to accommodate yet adequately regulate economic development in this area, as well as other industrially zoned areas of the city. And whereas the commission has identified a need for and has prepared revisions and modifications of the zoning regulations to address the need for reasonable use controls and appropriate design standards to promote and guide the economic development of that area immediately accessible from and served by the initial phase of construction of Constitution Boulevard North, which has been designed, bid, and is ready for construction. And whereas the commission has compiled the following amendments to the City of Shelton zoning regulations pertaining specifically to industrial and economic development. So what we need to do is A, amend section 23 permitted uses as follows. 1, we would amend Schedule A permitted uses by adding certain new use lines to read as follows. Use line 35A, cafeterias and other food service facilities for the convenience of the employees when clearly subordinate and directly related to the permitted use, operated as an integral part of the principal use and specifically excluding service to the general public. The reason we needed to create that use line is because we saw fit to remove restaurant uses as a permitted use. Usually we have permitted restaurants as permitted uses, but we decided it was not appropriate to keep it in the IA1. Therefore, to avoid any confusion as to whether that meant an industry couldn't have its own cafeteria, we wrote a specific use line to allow that. The second change is a new line 42C, which covers warehousing, storage, and distribution facilities, but specifically excluding trucking terminals having limited or no significant warehouse space. In other words, we want to accommodate traditional warehousing and storage, but we don't want to create a lot where trucks come and go and simply swap their load. That's just a trucking terminal. We don't want that. The other item we want to put in is 42D, which is wholesale business and supply facilities, specifically excluding wholesale club retailers and other primarily public-oriented dependent uses. In other words, we want to accommodate true wholesale business and supply, but we don't want somebody like a Costco or a Sam's to try to hide under that definition and say that they are permitted, because they're not. Okay. We also need to, number 2, we need to amend section 23, Schedule A permitted uses by revising certain use lines to read as follows. Use line D was group daycare homes and or child daycare centers when such use is not conducted in a dwelling unit and is situated in an industrial or an office park district for the purpose of serving the persons employed in these districts, subject to the additional standards and conditions set forth in 33. It was broadly written before, and we're narrowing it down now. We're talking about simply daycare facilities to accommodate the needs of the industries. We're also looking to modify the language in line 56, printing and publishing establishments occupying not more than 5,000 square feet of floor area, but then we added on specifically excluding copy centers unless it happens to be submitted in a commercial district. Another clarification was on line 62, which was originally sort of an all-inclusive line and was broken down residential versus non-residential. It became confusing as to what was appropriate. So staff decided to break it down into two use lines, 62A and 62B. 62A deals specifically with accessory uses customary with and incidental to any aforesaid permitted use when not located in a residence district, and it would be subject to the securing of a special exception or submission of an approval of a site plan, as each may be required for that permitted use. Now, on the residential side, however, we now have a bunch of ancillary uses that we needed to clarify. These have already been in the regulations. All we're doing is clarifying their location and being able to understand it better. These are accessory uses customary with and incidental to any aforesaid permitted residential use when located in a residence district, subject to the following additional standards. A, the accessory use shall be located on the same lot with the permitted use to which it is accessory. It's always been the case. B, the accessory uses may include off-street parking spaces and private garages, except that no unregistered motor vehicles or parts of motor vehicles shall be maintained on any lot unless located in an enclosed building, again, to protect the residential area, and that's always been in our regulations. C, except in connection with a permitted farm, truck garden, or commercial nursery, there shall be no more than one commercial vehicle parked or stored on any lot, and such vehicles shall not exceed 1.5 ton capacity. Again, that has always been in place in the city of Shelton. And then finally, item D, which everyone is aware of because it's come up in our past discussions on problem areas. No land in a residence district shall be used for vehicular access to a use permitted only in a commercial, industrial, light industrial park or office park district. Okay. Now, we've clarified some additional uses. We need to decide what use applies in what zone and in what manner. And to do that, there's a whole variety of amendments that are necessary to Schedule A. And these are as follows. For use lines 1, 1C, 4, 5, and 6, under the District Code IA1 column, because that's all we're affecting here, we will change P to X. So those use lines will no longer be allowed in the IA1 zone. B, use line 6C.
Mr. Panico,
Yes.
use line 1 is for single dwelling home, correct?
I have not memorized them.
No, I have it in front of me.
Okay.
1C is one dwelling unit accessory to a single detached dwelling for one family, subject to additional standards and provisions of paragraph 45C. Number 4 is a professional office in a dwelling unit, subject to standards of section 45. 5 is a business office or customary home occupation in a dwelling unit, subject to the additional standards of section 45. And 6 is the letting of rooms and or furnishing of board in a dwelling unit, subject to the additional standards of section 45.
Okay, as long as you have it in front of you, you might want to tell us what 6C is.
6C is group daycare homes and or child daycare centers when such use is not conducted in a dwelling unit and subject to the additional standards and conditions set forth in section 33.
Originally, that was allowed by special exception under the IA1 zone. we've concluded it doesn't belong there, so we're changing it to a prohibited use. Use line D, can you recap what D is?
Here, 6D, group daycare homes and or child daycare centers when such use is not conducted in a dwelling unit and is situated in a LIP or office park OP district for the purpose of serving the persons employed within those districts, subject to the additional standards and conditions set forth in section 33.
And we have broadened it to say that should also be allowed in the IA1 zone. So we're changing the X to an E.
Mhm.
Okay. Under item D, use lines 8, 10, and 11. Under the existing IA1 column, they're allowed by site plan approval. The commission felt that they should not be permitted. So they're being changed to X.
Okay, number 8, it talks about buildings, uses, and facilities of the state of Connecticut and federal government. So
That's right.
we can restrict that, okay. 10 is for stands.
If we can hold on one second.
Sure,
The subcommittee and the commission was concerned that we want to preserve as much of the land that we have available for good tax producing development. And therefore it felt that those types of facilities ought not to be accommodated.
right. No, that's definitely a good approach.
Okay, under use lines 13A and 13B.
Mr. Panico, can I just mention that for those of the commission that may not have the Schedule A in front of them, that's in the zoning book. 10 is for the stands for display and sale of farm and truck garden produce grown on the premises. 11 has to do with commercial nurseries, including greenhouses. Okay, so that's
And similarly, 13A and 13B.
13A is churches and places of worship and accessory parish halls.
Mhm.
13B is schools, colleges, universities, general hospitals, cemeteries, educational, religious, philanthropic, scientific, literary, historical, and charitable institutions, and agricultural and horticultural societies.
And again, those were allowed in the IA1 zone by special exception, and they are now being removed. They're prohibited. Under use lines 14 and 16A.
14 is
churches and
churches.
place of worship.
Yep.
16A, full-service fitness centers involving the general public. They were potentially allowable by special exception. Again, the commission thought that they should not be allowed. They potentially could take up valuable land for economic development.
Okay, but that does not say a company wants to have a exercise room in its facility.
Oh, that's different.
That's different. Okay.
That's different. That's not an independent business. That's a customary accessory activity.
Okay. All right.
Okay, use line 18, the delivery and boarding stables, et cetera. Originally, they were allowed by site plan approval, but the commission said they're not appropriate in our new IA1 zone. Got to remember, the original IA1 zone was a suburban industrial area up on 110 that covered acres and acres of wide open farmland and stuff. Were appropriate there. They're not for what we're going to use it for now, which is concentrated economic development. So we would change that site plan to a prohibited use. The same way under 18A, we would change the potential special exception to a prohibited use.
18A has to do with commercial kennels.
Right,
That's hospital and
commercial kennels.
I believe it's commercial kennels.
commercial. Yes.
Okay, very good.
Okay, and line 24 is stores, accessory stores? No, that's plain old retail.
24, you're up to?
Right. They used to
24.
allow, believe it or not, they used to allow retail in the industrial, but it's being declared a prohibited use.
Right.
26 and 27. 26 is business and professional offices, and 27 are other forms of offices for business and professional. At one time, they were allowed just by site plan approval, and now the commission has decided that we need to be more selective, so it's limited to a special exception use. Because there are times where those uses are acceptable, and there are times when it may not be acceptable.
Mhm.
Use line 28, which talks about banks. They were originally allowed by special exception, but I think the commission concluded we don't need banks in the middle of our industrial parks. Use line 32.
Mr. Panico,
Yes,
what about a credit union office? So
I'm
to
sorry.
Say the office for a credit union. When you say other financial institutions, would that fall within that?
It depends on how big a facility it is.
Okay.
If a major industry has a credit union and it operates out of one of their offices, that's accessory and subordinate.
Mhm.
But if they want to build a separate building for the XYZ credit union, no.
Right, okay.
All right, where were we? 28?
Tony,
No,
That was
32.
28.
can we go back to that?
Okay, 32.
Mr. Panico, Commissioner Kelly has a question.
Sure.
Can we go back to 28? Now, what would be the term of other financial institutions? For an example, at one time over here in Trumbull, Bank Union Trust, they had a computer center, very extensive computer center there. What would be the term financial institutions? I mean, they were a financial institution. They just weren't a bank at that specific point area. So what would that come under?
One of those data centers?
A data center.
Yeah,
It would come under a data center. It wouldn't come under.
Yeah.
Warehousing or something.
As long as they didn't do any banking, as long as they didn't do any customer banking activity at that location, then it would be an acceptable use.
Okay, all
Because
right.
What about
it would
Bitcoin
fit-
mining?
It would fit better under the category that we were just talking about, rather than under banks and financial institutions.
Okay,
Commissioner Parkins?
So a Bitcoin mining industry would be sort of a data center, but also a financial institution. Yes, no?
but they do transactions there, yeah, right?
You talk about walk-in transactions?
No, they
Oh.
don't do walk-in transactions.
Right.
It's really just a
Everything's
data
just-
center that they're just tons and tons of computer banks.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that'd be the same as a data center, right? That would be the same category?
Have to look at that. That's a data center? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's Commissioner Parkins, if something is a data center, then it's a data center. If, they're gonna have a bunch of people in there working on trying to find mining for Bitcoins and looking up Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies, that's more of an office, and that would probably be an office use.
Mm.
So I think it depends on what exactly it is, but if it's,
Yeah, because it happens to be sponsored or owned by a bank does not necessarily make it a bank. So you have to.
Well, they're typically not sponsored by banks, but I think we were looking more when we said other financial institutions. I think we were looking specifically more at credit unions or any kind of, but we really felt that, most of these financial institutions are going away from brick and mortar anyways.
Mhm.
So unless they are looking to build a corporate headquarters there, it's doubtful that anybody would be looking to build a financial institution there.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, 32.
Okay, use line 32, which is laundry, cleaning, and dyeing plants. They're allowed by site plan approval in the previous industrial zone, and in ours industrial zone, we're taking them out and prohibiting them.
Mhm.
35A, automobile sales and service, et cetera. We are saying under
That's an ad, 35A.
35A,
A cafeteria addition, Tony,
okay?
for on-site food establishments.
It's back under amend section 23, adding 35A. It's a new use line.
Is that a typo?
No,
No,
no. Go back to the beginning of the resolution, right after the whereases.
Tony, we're adding cafeterias as a.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's what, 35A is the cafeteria, isn't it?
Correct.
I forgot about that. Yeah, okay.
Cafeteria as a,
35A, I'm sorry, okay,
Yep.
not 36A. I'm looking at 36A, it's 35A. That's the
Right.
cafeteria, okay.
Mhm.
And what we're saying, that's a new use line, so we have to account for all of our zones. So in all the resident zones, it's obviously a not permitted use. In all the other district code towns, we are allowing it by site plan approval. So anybody in any of those other districts that needs to have a cafeteria would qualify simply by coming in and getting a site plan approval.
cafeteria falls into a subordinate use.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, this isn't a cafeteria for the general public.
No, it's pretty much.
yes, that's inherent in the way we defined it.
Yeah, it's the company cafeteria.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so use line 42A. How does it read now, Alex?
Accessory warehousing and storage as defined in
Okay,
5.3.
That's the wide open accessory warehousing, warehousing and wholesale businesses. And what we're saying is, it's not going to be allowed. It's originally wasn't allowed in the IA1 zone. And we're saying that by special exception, if we control what it is and where it is, it may be acceptable. So we'll give it a special exception.
Mhm.
Okay, now use lines 42C and 42D are the two brand new refinements of warehousing and wholesale business and let me go back and read my definition again. 42C is warehousing, storage, and distribution, without including trucking terminals. And 42D is when we bring in the wholesale business and supply activities. So 42C and D, obviously, under all of our residence districts and the CA1, CA2, and CA3 districts, we would not be allowing them. In the CB districts and in all our industrial districts, we will be allowing them by site plan. And in the IA1, the RBD, the OPD, the RFD, and the LIP, they would be controlled under a special exception. Okay. No questions? Good.
We're good.
And getting down now, use line 54, 55, and 56. Okay, milk distribution, milk plants and distribution, printing and publishing establishments, and small printing and publishing establishments. And we said that they're not going to be allowed solely by site plan review, but rather by special exception. And then 57 and 58, which are painting, woodworking, sheet metal shops, and things of that sort. They are now allowed by site plan review. We decided that they would not be appropriate in that zone. So they would not be allowed. And now finally, if you remember where we broke down use line 62A and 62B in place of the standard 62, 62A, since it pertains to non-residential use, in all the residence district columns, we would put in an X. And in the non-residence columns, an S. And use line 62B, which is all residential stuff. So therefore, in all our residence district columns, we would put site plan review. And in the non-residence columns, we would put an X, meaning they're prohibited. Now, those are the whole family of changes that need to take place in that schedule.
Mhm.
Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to amend section, in item B, we need to amend section 34, which is the area location and bulk standards.
Section 24,
Okay.
section 24.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say 34?
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Because we have to have it on the record.
Section 24, area location and bulk standards. First thing we need to do is under 24.3 height to read as follows. And, the first half of the paragraph is okay. And then when we pick up within the riverfront district and the industrial IA1 district, the commission may permit a greater height, but not exceeding 75 feet in height, to accommodate unusual mechanical or supportive features and facilities, as well as for a portion of a building totaling not more than 50% of the roof area to accommodate penthouses and mechanical equipment and elevator enclosures and features of that sort. So you get a 60-foot of usable height, and then we provide add-ons for these unusual features. And sometimes in an industrial complex, you might have an elevated water tower or something that has to go up to 75 feet. This will accommodate it.
Mhm.
Okay, and
So the roof is not capped at 60 feet. A portion of it could go up to 75 feet.
the main building goes to 60 feet,
Mhm.
but there's portions of the roof that for things that would go above that. And there's portions of, or unique types of mechanical equipment that may need to go above that.
And that's the whole point. It's got to be unique mechanical equipment or some of these other ones that you discussed, not just because they want to have a fancy facade.
Well, that would be a commission judgment. Well,
No, I'm saying, we've had some building designs presented before us, and
yes, we're
there are-
dealing with it right now. And the commission's conclusion was, if we don't allow them to do it, you're going to end up with a flat roof building, and the flat roof building we don't like.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of the fancy facades is to hide the equipment.
Yeah, but I'm not even thinking for something to hide equipment. It's just because they have a very avant-garde kind of
Oh, yeah.
design that, something that isn't.
Oftentimes this stuff gets very subjective, and we find we have to look at it and try to figure out how to apply it.
Okay.
It's hard to have black and white requirements in each and everything.
Mhm.
Okay, under paragraph 2, we would be amending paragraph 24.7 dealing with outside storage so that it reads as follows. 24.7.2, in light industrial park districts, outside storage areas shall not extend into the area required for setback from a property line, a street line, or a residence district boundary line. And it shall not exceed 15% of the lot area. That's a current requirement. In the industrial IA1 and light industrial park districts, said outside storage areas shall be enclosed, except for necessary access drives, by buildings, fences, walks, or evergreen shrubs or trees, so as to screen the storage area from view from any other lot or any street. In other words, you can have outside storage, but you got to do something about screening it.
Mhm.
The way you lay out your buildings or fencing or whatever. The enclosing buildings, fences, walls, embankments, or evergreen shrubs or trees shall be of a height sufficient to screen completely the storage area, or have a height of 8 feet, whichever is less, and shall be of a density to be not less than 75% effective in screening such view, except that when evergreen shrubs or trees are used, such height and density shall be achieved within 5 years after the establishment of the storage area. So there's some flexibility. If you want to do a natural buffer, we give you a little bit of time for that buffer to grow and tighten up.
Mhm.
But generally, we're looking to soften it and screen it. 3, we would be amending paragraph 24.8, site development and landscaping, subparagraph 24.8.4 to read as follows. In industrial and LIP districts, no part of the area required for setback from a residence district boundary line shall be used for off-street parking, for driveways or off-street parking or loading. In other words, you have to protect your residence district boundary area. In other than IB2 districts, no part of the area required for setback from a street line shall be used for off-street loading, and no more than 50% of the area can be used for driveways and off-street parking. In other than IB2 districts, the area required for setback from a street line shall be suitably landscaped with trees and or shrubs, lawns, washed gravel, or ornamental brick or stone pavement, except for sidewalks and permitted driveways and off-street parking spaces. And finally, along and adjacent to any residence district boundary line, a strip of land not less than 50 feet in width in any LIP's district and not less than 30 feet in width in any other industrial district shall be left in its natural state if already wooded, or shall be landscaped with evergreen trees planted to grow into a dense evergreen buffer strip within 5 years. Okay. Now, item 4, we need to amend section 24, the area location and bulk standards, Schedule B standards, under the district code column headed by IA1 to read as follows. The minimum lot area would be 120. I'm sorry?
Schedule B. I know, but this, the standards.
It's the table right after Schedule A. The one-page table that gives you height, all the various standards.
We'll go back. Yeah. Can't do split screen,
Okay.
huh? No, go ahead, Mr. Panico.
Okay, so first of all, line 1, which is minimum lot area, in our zone, it would be 120,000 square feet under the RA1. I'm sorry, under the IA1.
Mhm.
Line 1A, 2, and 2A are not applicable. Line 3, the minimum square on the lot would be 250 feet. Line 4, the minimum lot frontage, we are using 50 feet because many times an industrial parcel is set in the back somewhere and it needs to have simply enough right of way to get out to the street. So we've used 50 feet as a minimum. The maximum number of stories. Typically in our industrial zones, we don't put a limit on stories. We set limits on height, but not on stories. So we're doing the same thing here. There is none. The maximum height, however, has been changed to 60 feet to be more consistent with our other industrial zones. Originally, it was set at 40 because it was a suburban industrial category. Number 7, the minimum street setback, we've selected 50 feet to be consistent with the IA2. And because it is a large size lot, it's a 3-acre lot. The rear line setback is 50 feet. The sideline or other setbacks are also 50 feet. The minimum residence district setback, if it happens to be that your lot abuts a residential line, a residential zone line, then that district setback is 75 feet. The maximum building lot coverage has been changed to 30%. I think it was a little lower than that before, and we increased it slightly. Maximum impervious lot coverage is 75%. The maximum floor area ratio is 90%. And 14, 15, 16, 17 just don't apply. Now, understand, I think we go into this new IA1 zone with these standards. But you need to keep your mind open that if we run into a problem with a particular standard, that it's inappropriate as we explore projects that are brought in, we may want to go back and change some of them. But for starters, the staff and the subcommittee felt that these were reasonable standards. Okay, those are all of the amendments. Now let's get back to our whereas clauses. Now, having set out these amendments, whereas the copies of the proposed amendments set forth above were filed in the office of the city town clerk and were referred to the applicable regional planning agencies as required by statute. And the duly noticed public hearing was held on February 23rd, 2022, and continued to and concluded on March 23rd, 2022, to consider adoption of said amendments. And whereas the proposed revisions received no negative regional referral comments, and the public comments offered at the public hearings were expressed support for the amendments, the commission has determined that said amendments reflect all final modifications set forth above and are in compliance with all applicable state statutes. Said amendments are clear and specific as to development standards and controls, primarily within the industrial IA1 zone, recognizing the complexity of industrial development issues in the Constitution Boulevard North economic development area, and the need to preserve flexibility and reasonable control. Now, we believe those standards give you all of that. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission as follows. A, the subject amendments to section 23, districts, permitted uses, and section 24, area location and bulk standards of the Shelton zoning regulations are hereby adopted. B, said amendments shall become effective on Friday, May 13th, 2022 at 8 a.m. And C, said amendments are adopted for the reasons set forth herein and for the following specific reasons. Number one, said amendments will accommodate proposed private sector development, private sector economic development interest in the city-owned former Moss property and other development sites served by Constitution Boulevard North under reasonable scrutiny by the commission with reasonable standards and controls. Two, the amendments will assist and guide the city and the commission in implementing their vision for the economic growth and development of the area along Constitution Boulevard North. And three, the amendments are consistent with the comprehensive plan of zoning for the city and do not conflict with Shelton's adopted plan of conservation and development.
Okay.
Unless there's further discussion, we can move it.
All right, any questions for Mr. Panico or for Mr. Rossetti? All right, hearing none, is there a commissioner that would like to move the motion?
I'll move the motion.
Commissioner Kelly's indicated that he'd like to move the motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner
second.
Parkins will second.
I hear two voices.
Ruth can have it. That's fine.
Who's seconding?
Commissioner Parkins?
Yes, I second.
Okay. All right, any final discussion?
No, I
Right.
just like also reiterate or iterate what Attorney Teodoso said about what a good job has been done on this by staff and by Mr. Panico.
Mhm,
Quite a project, quite an undertaking.
Sure was. Okay, so there being no further discussion on a roll call, Commissioner Motto,
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Lascos,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So the vote has passed 6-0. And again, I further compliment staff for doing such a terrific job on this very large and tedious project. Mr.
Well,
Zaidi-
in all fairness, the staff pulled it together, but the subcommittee did a lot of work too.
Yeah, it was all hands on deck, that's for sure.
These were their decisions and we just tried to
Yeah.
make them stick.
Mhm. No, I think it was very well done. So kudos to everybody. Mr. Rossetti, could you just fill us in now on the next step? What we can expect?
Now that the commission has decided to approve these text changes, we have a zone, the IA1 zone, which the city, via the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've accepted the application to change the zoning map for this zone, this IA1 zone, to, be installed on the Moss property and the other relevant properties around the Moss property, in between Bridgeport Avenue and where Constitution North is going to go. So that application will be coming up for a hearing at the end of this month. So this zone, with these textual changes that we have all been through, are what will apply to the properties that you will see before you at the end of the month.
And what we'll see if the form will be a map.
Yes.
Okay, so whatever, if somebody was to pull up their zoning map right now and see certain things are colored certain ways, what we'll see at the meeting at the end of the month will be the new revised map with new revised colors.
Correct.
So to speak. Okay. Very good. Any questions for staff before we move on? Okay, so next agenda item is public portion. If there's anyone in the auditorium that would like to address the commission on any item not on the agenda, please come to the podium. If there's anyone participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature to indicate you'd like to address the commission.
You could just ask, if any of the attendees would like to speak up, you are unmuted. If not, we will move on. But if you'd like to speak up, please do so now.
Okay, last call. Anyone would like to participate in the public portion to address the commission on any item not on the agenda? All right, last call for anyone from the public who would like to address the commission on any item not on the agenda. Okay, then no indication from anyone in the auditorium or participating remotely. So we'll move on to comments from the chair. I'd just like to mention this morning, there was a meeting of the SPZC. 267 Canal Street requires the development of a community relations plan and an analysis of brownfields alternatives at Ascom Hassler, which is 287 Canal Street. Phase 1 study, sampling plan of hazardous materials and inventory have been completed. The committee formed to come up with a plan to restore the locks is now ready to meet with the mayor to discuss its plan. Commissioner Kelly, you have any comments from the downtown subcommittee?
No, I did talk to Mr.
Nappy.
Nappy, and he indicated that we'll probably have a meeting at the end of June or after the 4th.
Okay. All right.
Will be available at that time.
Okay. And then Commissioner Amato, do you have any comments from the zoning subcommittee?
We did review a couple of sign applications. One turned out to be 1000 Bridgeport Avenue, turned out to be basically just a color change, and we liked it better than what they had originally proposed and what they have now, actually. But the other one, the other sign pertained to the, what is it? I don't forget the name of that place, the experience.
Escape room.
Out. What is it?
It's an
Escape room.
Yeah.
Yeah, there seems to be an issue there with 2 lawn signs and
Okay.
how they put the sign up. I guess Ruth had spotted the sign already. We're not crazy about the sign itself, and that's already up, so.
And the applicant was aware that they had to get that approved before installation.
Yeah, well, so I guess that's coming to the full commission at some point.
It's
Yeah.
installed.
We have been in touch with them. They are going to come in for a temporary sign and work with their tenant or landlord to come up with a better sign proposal for the commission. So
Mhm.
we are working on it.
Okay.
Are they the only tenant in that building?
I don't think so, but they
No.
are it seems like the major tenant, but they're not the only tenant.
They were supposed to occupy the first floor. The second floor was supposed to be the same tenant occupying a copy center, but that is not open to the public. It's for private copying, commercial copying. That's what they had explained to us earlier.
It's not like a Staples.
No, it's not like a Staples at all. So. Okay, so, Mr. Rossetti, staff comments. You have some,
Just a couple quick things. Not all of you have been to town hall, but we are in the works of renovating our office a bit, moving things around to accommodate some more personnel, which is wonderful. And we appreciate all the help we can get. And we have some great staff coming on board. Right next to me now, I have a gentleman by the name of Ray Baldwin, who will be joining us. There's a gentleman named Mike, and I'm forgetting his last name. I apologize. He'll be working with engineering and zoning. We have also advertised to fill the zoning enforcement officer position. So hopefully that comes to fruition in a little while. And then we have another lady by the name of Lisa Maury, who is helping us with our administrative work. So we are, as you are all aware, we are busy, but we are getting the staff to help manage the load. And we're making some office changes as well. And so if anyone wants to come by after a couple weeks of moving cabinets and stuff around, you're more than welcome to check out the new digs.
I'm coming tomorrow.
But we are happy to have the new staff. And if you give us a call, or when you give us a call, if you hear one of their voices, they are part of the team.
Very good. Well, we're looking forward to working with Mr. Baldwin and all the other staff members that have come on board. Any questions for Mr. Rossetti? Okay, Mr. Panico, do you have any comments?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is minutes for approval. I'll just mention that we'll only be doing the April 20th, as the April 27th minutes were not posted to the website. So does anybody have any comments or changes for the April 20th minutes? I have none myself.
I have none.
Okay. All right, hearing no comments about changes for the April 20th meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Commissioner Parkins will make. Go ahead.
Commissioner Parkins, and is there a second?
Sure, Commissioner Tuckey.
Thank you, Commissioner Dickey. So on the motion to approve the April 20th minutes as submitted from Commissioner Parkins and seconded by Commissioner Dickey, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Motto?
I was not at that meeting.
Okay, so you're going to abstain,
Yes.
right? Commissioner Laskos?
Aye.
Commissioner Dickey?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
I was also not at that meeting.
Okay, abstain. And Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion has passed 4-0-2. Okay, so the April 27th meeting minutes will be on an agenda of an upcoming meeting. So seeing that there's no other item on the agenda, the chair declares this evening's meeting adjourned as of 7:42 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.